Man, so much of what we do can just feel like chaos upon chaos upon chaos. And you know, Ryan, I'm finding one of the things I really like in what we do, one of my favorite words now is clarity and focus. This is a crucial episode going back to the $1 million question.
Welcome to the Leading Edge in Emotionally Focused Therapy with your hosts, Dr. James Hawkins and Dr. Ryan Rana. EFT is a dynamic model that humbles even the most seasoned therapists. Together, we want to come alongside you as you continually push the leading edge of your understanding and application of this wonderful model developed by Dr. Sue Johnson.
So, I really appreciate, once again, the heart of this podcast is about finding those little ways in sessions where you can do something small just to get a little bit clearer to help increase the efficacy of your work, get a little bit cleaner, get a little bit focused, never guaranteeing you solutions, just trying to help, as Chad Imhoff taught me, just trying to give you a higher percentage chance is what we're trying to do sometimes, right? So we've just been, Ryan and I talking about the $1 million question. We want to revisit that today to see if we can get a little bit clear on using the $1 million question in the midst of chaos with our couples.
Yes, an important topic, and it's good to be back with you and coming off of a major surgery. I asked the surgeon to make my voice sound cool like James's voice. I don't think we really got that good of results, but maybe I can breathe a little better and not in the microphone. So, man, it's good to be with you. This is, part one. We're going to be reviewing this as we develop this material today. I think it's very important material. We reserve the right to come back and fix it too, because I haven't really heard this quite described in the way that we're trying to, and we're trying to get really, really clear. So we were calling this the $1 million question just before James and I hit play here. I said I think calling it the $1 million question was a complete failure. It just, in our effort to be clear, I think it wasn't clear enough. Mm-hmm. And so we want to rebrand this a little bit. Again, we're never doing acronyms to be cool. We're just trying to help folks hang on, because the chaos of the distress in relationships, man, it's quite a thing. Mm-hmm. And I know I have a heart for people who are trying to learn to help distress relationships, trying to learn EFT, and they're having a hard time. Mm-hmm. And then I have a heart for helping people manage the chaos of this, because I really believe if you can hang in there, you can get to see the beauty. Mm-hmm. I think oftentimes you're way closer to breakthroughs than you might think you are. Yep. But it's also true that to get to the leading edge, you have to get in the right game. Mm-hmm. We have to establish a focus that's to build our structures around areas that are really, really tuned in to where people are. So we're changing our name here, or changing our label here from the $1 million question to the F.R.A. So getting into the F.R.A, or getting into the right F.R.A. And F.R.A is an acronym. I know that's what you all wanted more of. F.R.A is F.R.A. We're just going to put a Y out there because we need a vowel. Sometimes you got to buy a vowel, Pat. So anyway, failed repair attempt is what the F.R.A means. So what we're trying to say here is early in your sessions, or, sometimes not as early, you're trying to do what some people think of as Tango 1. We're reflecting the present process within and between, and you're trying to pick a piece of work that you're going to do that day. And that is hard to do, because it's the one thing, as we say, distress relationships cannot do, is focus. By the way, shout out to my recent core skills group in Las Vegas. We did the first ever F.R.A role play.
What?
Yeah. And I thought it was going to be a total mess. Everybody completed it, 12 minutes, like, we got that. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. So good job, Vegas team, and thanks for helping us develop this. So Tango 1, you're trying to pick a piece of work. You're managing the chaos of multiple stories, which are often interrupting each other. And what we're trying to say with a failed repair attempt is this is where you might consider, or we're recommending considering, this is where you're going to set up your assembly work. This is where you're going to set up TEMP, if you like that acronym, or Arnold's processing, appraisal theory, all saying the same things. Cue, limbic, meaning action, or trigger, emotion, and limbic, meaning and protective action. This is where you're trying to set up shop to do that assembly. And we're saying this in contrast to two other things. All right. So on my left hand over here, you could see in the studio if you were here, what we have is their big picture cycle, like the normal moves they make when they're in a time of distress. The pursuer moves, the withdrawer moves, however you want to describe that. And that is really important. But it may not be super fresh. On the other hand, on the right hand over here is you have their content, their stories. And you do not want to get stuck trying to mediate and solve content. Couples will teach you that until they have safety, until they have a slower, more organized way of being together. They can't install good content solutions anyway. So you got content over here. You want to stay out of solving. Over here on my left side, you have their big picture cycle. In the middle, what you have is their F.R.A. And that is, it can look a lot like their big picture cycle. It won't be the same as their content. But oftentimes it's a little manifestation off their cycle that really brings you to the present process. We say phrases like present process, people's eyes glaze over. So that's kind of what we're referring to here, the present cycle between the two where you're going to set up your piece of work. So let's talk about research for a minute. Let's say that you're working with a relationship and 2 weeks before they're in your office for session 7, something really bad happens. I don't know, maybe an affair or maybe something horrific. And every day since then, they have beautiful repair conversations. One person gets out a really clear signal, it's vulnerable, put their heart forward. The other person tunes in, validates, comforts. The thing about that is they would never come to you. So people are in your office because they cannot repair. So that research is what's informing this idea of the F.R.A. So just like the $1 million question, when the topic of money comes up and you try to have a conversation about money, how does your conversation go? What we're listening for is how do we miss an attuned repair and get stuck in a reactive negative cycle? That is the F.R.A. Mm-hmm. That's the F.R.A., the failed repair attempt. How many couples have fights about money? 95% probably, maybe more. The difference is secure couples can repair. Clinically distressed couples, something happens to their repair attempt. So we're really trying to join them there. Is that making sense?
Yeah. What's coming up for me, tell me if because me and Ryan are kind of built in this plane as we fly, which is cool, right? With the $1 million question, I remember particularly one couple case I was working with, I used the $1 million question just to kind of even start getting clear on how does this couple dance together. And they bring up a topic conversation. I'm like, oh, that's great. So, but here's the question though. When this topic comes up, what happens to your relationship? And we worked through some stuff. We did assembly and it was great, but there was no juice. I didn't know, of course, we weren't talking about F.R.A. or anything, but I did notice it shifted. Because one thing we teach some of us teach when we do move one of the tango, don't just stop after you get the protection. Push a little bit further. And so after that happens, how do you two go to bed? How do you kind of close it out when things aren't good? How do you pick back up? And with this couple, it shifted, Ryan. Like when we got to the protection part and the withdrawer talked about the protective move of I just go quiet. I try and like show her, how we're good. I try to kind of perform. And then when that doesn't work, there's a shift. I try to perform, but then when that doesn't work, I just feel hopeless. Boom. In other words, because you feel that shift, it's like I tried something. I tried to turn it towards the positive to protect the relationship. And then that didn't work. And I felt like a whole lot more juice came in. So what's happening for me here, Ryan, is I'm thinking maybe I would probably still use the $1 million question with a brand new couple at the beginning just to get clear. But this F.R.A., then all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, this is where it comes alive here. So when things are bad and you can't solve it or you can't talk about it, and the things you try to do to try and repair it, to try and get back connected, because this is working with attachment even more so now in a way, because attachment is about, there's a distance here. And now I got to try and seek some kind of proximity with you because there is some distress between us and I don't know how to bridge that. That's a good place to set up camp to kind of do your EFT work, because now what's going through my head is I got to help attachment do what it do. at this moment. I don't know. That's what's happening for me.
Yeah, well said. That's where they live.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they live. That is the current status of their bond. Mm-hmm. That actually is right setting up the leading edge. Mm-hmm. This is as far as we can go in this relationship.
Yeah, because I can't go back and say, oh, when you want to talk about date night, can we switch our tone about how you talk about wanting that date? Like, that's not going to really do it. But when it's like you want to talk about date night and your partner shows no interest, they give you no eye contact. So you kind of raise your voice or you do something to get their attention, but you have no way to get their attention back. And then even if things go wrong, you don't know how to get it back right. So then I'm thinking about a pursuer, then you kind of like try not to be too much and you try to turn yourself off. Or with pursuer, the withdrawers, like you might try and get positive or you try and give it some space, but then that turns against you. None of your attempts to repair this relationship seems to help you. So you know you can't prevent it, but you also can't repair it. That really sucks. You can't prevent it and you can't repair it. My goodness. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I think so. I want to say three things. I'm going to go back a step.
Okay.
You know, you could just use this generally, you know, a good check-in moment at like minute 20, minute 18, maybe 14 if you're a superstar, or maybe 30 if it's really tough that session. We're talking about between that 15 and 30 minute aspect of your session. You can just say to yourself, do I actually have the fray? Am I in the fray with them? Wow. Or are we just speaking generally? And this is what I see people do ad nauseum is setting up an assembly, doing great EFT interventions, but we're not really clicked in to where the latest status of their bond is. An example I used in Vegas is it's like trying to hang a heavy picture on nothing but drywall. There's no structure behind that to nail into. So even if your interventions are good, you're just like, wait, where are we? What are we talking about? So three things I'm referring to, especially the second two here. Number one is just, you know, before you're leaving Tango 1, if you're someone who actually thinks about Tango in session, I'm not, but you certainly could be. It's a good mini model. You could just generally check in with yourself. Am I in the fray here? Am I actually building the structure of the focus of this session into their failed repair attempt? If not, there's a really good chance you might be talking about important things, but it's actually not where they are. Failed repair attempt actually is going to set up your triggers because that is where we can't grow. So there's number one. That's the general application of this. I really want to focus on number 2 and 3, though, after this commercial break.
Therapists work together at successandvulnerability.com to create a focused online training program to help you learn how to work in some of the hardest places in emotional and relational distress. Check us out at successandvulnerability.com.
All right, thanks. We'd love to have you at sv.com. So number 1 was generally speaking, 15 minutes to 30 minutes, check in. Am I in their fray or am I just sort of around it, you know? The main 2, though, and these happen a lot. I mean, I was trying to think how often these come up. I think it's 80 or 90% of sessions. When people come in upset. So if it's been a decent week, this can actually be harder. We've talked about positive or partial de-escalation in previous episodes. So number 1 was general. Number 2 is a recent event. Thursday night, 6 days ago, I really, really needed you. I called you, and you chose to send me to voicemail to, finish your poker game, or maybe something bigger than that. Are you going to go talk about poker? Are we going to teach them? Or perhaps we can jump into the fray. Okay, summarize. I see your side. So let me call timeout for just a minute. That was 6 days ago. In your very best efforts to fix this, when you're talking about that phone call and what happened and all the messages that's sent, how has your conversation gone? When you two have tried to address this, what happens? That is where the relationship needs you. That is where you want to set up your tent of assembly and temp.
Please feel the difference in that. And I will admit, like, I probably would have went like, so you called, and then went to voicemail. Can we slow down with that? And can we process that out? What was the trigger for you? The voicemail. When I got the voicemail. But the difference, like you just said, Ryan, in the 6 days following, this is where we're switching the $1 million. Like in the 6 days following, what did it look like for you two to process that situation? Because that's where they can't find their way back to each other again. And that's what we're trying to help them do.
Yeah. If you set up your assembly last Thursday night at the poker game or on the phone, that can work.
Yeah.
That can work. But what you've done is just like given away 12 minutes of let me talk about what was going on at the poker game. Here's what my buddy was doing. My phone battery was low, and you always never call, right? And you haven't focused it in about their relationship.
That's
The status of their current relationship exists in what didn't happen for those 6 days.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you move, but that feels so different. That feels more hopeful. I'm like, I'm excited for my next client, which I have one at 4. And I'm like, literally, I don't want to talk about that. When you two, after that happened, what did it look like for you two to deal with that pain from that miss or that moment? That's big.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
What we're going to do, we're going to keep these microphones on during James's 4 o'clock. We're going to see how good he really is. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So number one is just generally, you can be kind of mentally checking in. Hey, am I in the fray here? Failed repair attempt? Or am I just sort of hitting nails into a wall, hoping I hit something? And ask me how I know how that feels. I've done it many, many times, so don't let me come across as, demeaning or anything. So number one would be general. Number two would be, this is a great focus move off of a recent event, sort of an attachment bruise that happened this week. It's a great way to really, really get to where they are. The call and the poker game are not where they are. Their inability to repair that is where they are. Number three, if any of you like John Gottman's research like I do, he says, and I think he's right, most long-term relationship has what he calls chronic problems or chronic issues. And it's been a while since I've read that, honestly. So if I misquote Dr. Gottman here, my apologies. He'll be on next week, actually. No, he's not.
I'm like, tell me something.
He never heard of us. All right, number three is one of these chronic issues. This is, to me, a primary use of the F.R.A concept, $1 million question, whatever you want to call it. So, for instance, money. People come in, money, finance. One person spends too much. One person is too cheap. Funny how that works. There's a spender and a saver in almost every relationship, pursuer, withdrawer, right? And so what are you going to do? Give them a spreadsheet, whatever. Let me know how that works. Because until they can secure and hear each other, until their culture, their relationship is secure, then relationships pick some issue to fight over. And that content is where the attachment realities play out. So the F.R.A question would be, or the F.R.A move we're talking about here is summarize, reflect, validate pretty quickly, then stop it. But otherwise, we're going to go talk about money for 16 minutes. And then you're going to run out of time if we actually get somewhere good. So when you two try to have a conversation about money, when you two try to fix this, when you two try to address this, what happens to your conversation, right? And then we track from there. And if it's really, really chaotic, I've said this on here before, so forgive the repeat. I'll even say, time out. Hang on. Whew, man, I can feel that cycle. No wonder. This is hard to get out of. But for me, I need you to slow down. I need you to stay with me for 5 minutes. I need you to get me explicitly clear. We're going to take out all the meaning, all the emotion out of this for just a minute. Can you give me the GPS turn-by-turn direction? When the topic of money comes up and is not feeling good, who does what first, then second, then third, then fourth? And we're trying to track that all the way until the relationship regulates, which what that typically looks like in a distressed relationship is nothing really happens. They just sort of fire at each other until they sleep on it a couple of days. They're not mad anymore. Then they just go back to relating in different ways, but they're scarred and their bond is bruised. So they're way more likely to have the next fight about money or something else. So those three applications are generally a recent event or a chronic issue. So I want to go backwards just a step really quick, James. Shout out to my old professor, Dr. Wendell Ray. And the language I'm using here is somewhat borrowed from him. So he is an expert, genuinely an expert in MRI, which is the Mental Research Institute out of Palo Alto, started back in the 50s. And MRI is a therapy model. I've practiced it some in my early years. I'm a little different now, but I still have a lot of respect for it. It is literally designed for change. If you're stuck and you just want to help change, it is the thing. I mean, it literally has like 4 steps and that's it. And so, get a clear, concrete description of the problem. I'm kind of doing that. And then number 2 move is the main theory of change in MRI. And that is that stuck people have redundantly failed attempted solutions. And that is now the problem. The very thing that they're doing to try to make this better makes this worse. Again, it's not exactly the way I practice, but it's not stupid. And what you'll find is there's a lot of patterns that go on there. And so their whole model is about pattern interruption, help people slow down, do less, kind of work paradoxically. So I think failed repair attempts are central to stuckness. And if your desire is to unstuck stuckness from an EFT lens, after we unstuck stuckness, now we want to go for corrective experience. Whereas MRI would say, just get out of the way, right? And so with respect to both models, what we're saying here is that's a way to dial in to where they are and to where they are stuck. So if I'm a park ranger and someone's out on a hike and they fall and their leg is stuck between 2 rocks, I mean, where do I go to meet them? Do I go back to their walking form? Do I go back to the previous mile? Or here's a big one. Let me just teach them about safe hiking. No way. I got to join them right in the rock they're stuck with and their experience of it. And that is the way to most help them. And so the rock that you're stuck, that was going to be good until I messed that up. The rock that your clients are stuck in is their failed repair attempt. That's where we're trying to set up shop.
Man, that's good. Because, this is just us being true to attachment. Again, thank you for Sue and people like Philip Shaver, Mario Michelangelo, and all the people doing, research on adult attachment. Our clients are already trying to repair it. So we're, the things in life, we can't go out and make the world so, I don't know what the right way, to make it where their relationship never faces challenge. We're just setting them up for failure, and that's not realistic to where they never have challenge. But why they're here with us is because in their best attempts to repair things, it doesn't work. And then that's so frustrating and hurtful and painful that their very attempts to repair, it could be if I'm trying to lift the rock off my leg or off my partner's leg, it just it brings even more pressure and crushes them even more. That sucks. So that's what we are. I love this new focus for me. And I can tell you, we're talking about it, it is a difference maker. I remember that couple. I'm like, oh, they taught me a lesson. Why did I spend so much time up top with the original kind of issue that put them in distress, when in more of their energy, which like Ryan said, I'm not throwing that out. There still can be change there. I'm sure you all have experienced it. But I did see this couple's energy come alive more when we got down to that first assembly and their protection, and then what was it like for them when they tried that protective move? What did they notice after that? That brought up so much more juice for that withdrawal. It's like when I tried this to get her to see the positive, I saw more anger. And then I really freaked out and I really panicked at that point. At first, it was like, oh, we can talk our way through this. But then at that point, I tried to make it better and it got worse. I'm hopeless now. We just got to kind of let's do triage here and save as much blood in this thing as we can. So I really appreciate this and like this, a new way of focus, another way to push the edge, right?
Yep. So what we're saying, just to be purposefully redundant, the question that we are suggesting that you might consider is when you two try to solve the issue of his mom, when you two try to solve the issue of your blended family issue, when you two try to solve the issue about sex, when you two try to solve the issue about what happened Thursday night, what happens to your conversation? The therapist is thinking, let me get clear on how this becomes a negative cycle, self-perpetuating negative cycle, versus the attuned bond that we know would work. Yeah. And after we do that, we got to be careful that question doesn't take us out of the office, because as soon as we get the F.R.A, then we really want to bring it alive in session. So you can set up a trigger in the last 6 days after the poker game, but really, really quickly, right now as you reflect on that, what happens for you?
I like that.
So we want to get it here and now as quickly as we can. Qualifier. This is not really anything new.
That's right.
All right. This is, just like you said, credit to Sue, George, all the other trainer team, whomever. Number one, that's my first qualifier. My second qualifier, when you two try to have this conversation to solve issue X, what happens to you? That's just one way. To me, that's a really clean way that helps the therapist stay clear. There are many other ways, and the listeners here or other trainers, I know other trainers listen to us sometimes may say, I like this question better, so we'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't care. It makes me no difference what question you do. What makes me a difference is starting your work with enough structure there where your work can actually take some traction. Like if you're trying to hang a picture, if you're nailing into a stud, a piece of wood, it goes a lot better. Good old, halfway frail, what do you call that stuff? Drywall, kind of chips everywhere. That's what it feels like when we've missed the F.R.A. So some trainers will just say, hey, what's happening between you two? And they're so dialed in on their model and where they're going, that's enough. But what I find is that's not as replicatable as I want it to be for new trainees or for people who, because if you say what's happening between you two, that can go a lot of different directions. That's pretty open-ended for people who are already in chaos.
Man, there's two things I want to close out with even one, as you say this, I know people say they like us using images too, right? And when I think about the F.R.A, I like watching war movies, especially like old ones when they had to like get hand to hand. And the kind of like, the idea of your best warrior being in the F.R.A, in the thickest part of the battle in a way, right? And you would keep the king and the nobles. They wouldn't be in the F.R.A. They're too valuable, right? So they wouldn't be in the F.R.A. But where we are wanting to go is, hey, you all, thank you for listening. Like the people that we get to meet that listen to this are people who care. I'm not even worried about your skill in some ways, right? Your heart and your compassion for people. You want to be in the F.R.A. of things. When you watch football, everyone sees the quarterback and they see the wide receivers. But man, it's a lot that happens on the line for football players where the defensive linemen, offensive linemen are mucking it up. They're in the F.R.A, right? And so we're just trying to help you all work in the F.R.A. Transition to my second point. Third, I do have a second. And that word solve is the new one we're really installing. What happens when you try to solve or repair when you have rough moments in your relationship? What happens? Because that's literally attachment broke down there. You couldn't find your way back to each other. And then the third one, just talking about the leading edge, I think what I like about even like we want to give you practical things and we talk about kind of content or, clinical stuff, but it's also, I think there's a mindset and a culture to it. What me and Ryan are saying is like, man, keep just always evaluating and learning and thinking. This is a tradition and a culture that Sue started in EFT. Sue always welcomes innovation and people to think and to try. And that's why this model keeps moving and growing. That's why we have the Tango now. And it's like in so many things, that's why we have the ICEEFT primer. And that's why, we're always doing this. And that's just the culture of what we're doing on this podcast. Not that we are it, but that also we love all the other trainers who like, man, I learned this new thing and I tried this and I taught like this. And it's like, whoa, that's great. Or I use this slide or this thing. It's like going. And so I do want to say, for you all, you are a part of the leading edge too. That you're listening to a podcast, trying to get better, trying to learn. You're breaking down your own session tapes and learning, and you're taking new nuggets of things and learning how to install it. So thank you for being a part of this. We really, really appreciate you and all that you're doing for your clients. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope this experience helps you push the leading edge in your work to help people connect with themselves and with each other. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. You can contact us at pushtheleadingedge@gmail.com, and you can follow us on our Facebook page at Push the Leading Edge. You can follow Ryan on Facebook at Ryan Rana Professional Training and on his website, ryanranatraining.com. You can follow James on Facebook and Instagram at dochawklpc. You can also check out his website, dochawklpc.com.